playing Mr. Dropstone.
You're really playing the Caro-Kann? No!
Hello there and welcome to the first part of the Caro-Kann Defense series. Most openings tell you to fight for the space early on. The Caro-Kann says something very different. It says, take the space and I'll take the better position later. And that mindset is exactly why this opening has survived for more than a century. One thing I almost never see people talk about is the story behind the opening. Unlike many famous openings, the Caro-Kann wasn't born from one legendary game or a world championship match. Instead, it was built slowly by two thinkers, two chess players. The opening is named after Horacio Caro and Caro-Kann. They first analyzed it in 1886 and their work was published in a German chess magazine. And from that moment on, the Caro-Kann became an opening for players who think long-term. At its heart, the Caro-Kann tells white, go ahead, take the space, push your pawn, because black's goal is not to attack early, but to reach a better, healthier position later, aiming to win in the end game. The opening starts very simply. e4 by white, which is the only move that you could play the Caro-Kann against. Caro-Kann c6, d4, d5, and this is the Caro-Kann pawn structure. No tricks, no drama, just the structure for now. The Caro-Kann is often described as the French defense without the bad bishop, and that's a huge compliment. Unlike the French defense, black's light square bishop is free. It's not locked behind pawns, and you'll understand exactly why that matters later in this series. So why would anyone choose to play the Caro-Kann? For four main pillars. First thing, healthy pawn structure. One of the biggest reasons to play the Caro-Kann is the pawn structure. No early pawn weaknesses, no structural damage, no long-term liabilities. You get a position that's solid, flexible, and reliable. Second thing is long-term thinking. This opening is not about quick wins. Black may concede space early, but in return, black gets clear piece coordination, strong endgame prospect, a durable, long-lasting structure. The Caro-Kann rewards patience. Third thing is flexibility. The Caro-Kann can be solid, classical, dynamic, endgame oriented. You can choose your plan based on the position. No memorized tricks. And lastly, to understand what the Caro-Kann is not. This is important. The Caro-Kann does not support early, crazy, all-in attacks. If your goal is to checkmate your opponent on move 12, this is not your opening. So let's discuss briefly about the Caro-Kann features. How does black fight for the center? Not by overextending, not by rushing, not by complex moves, but by anchoring key squares. And that's why the c6 move is really important, supporting the d5 square, flanking on the center, contesting it right away, no delays, and keeping the king side pawn intact for the king's safety. And that brings us to the key squares and ideas. The d5 square, which is also called the anchor square, is the backbone of the black's position. It provides central control, supports piece activity, and it's very hard for white to undermine it cleanly. It controls the e4 and the c4 squares and facilitates the c5 in the future, which also brings us to the c6, the quiet hero. The pawn on c6 supports d5, that's the thing, and gives black queenside flexibility, opening the way for the queen. And later in the game, the c5 breaks becomes critical in the right moment. The pawn push often opens the position in black's favor if played in the right position at the right time. Last square to keep in mind is actually the e5 square, which is the white space advantage. According to the engine, the best move in this position for white is play e5, which is actually called the Caro-Kann advanced variation. So white is often allowed to push e5. Black doesn't panic. Black plays around that space. And as I've told you, Caro-Kann at the very beginning, it simply says, you can take space right now, but I'll take the better position later in the game. So these are the key squares that I have for you. d5, the anchor square, d6, the quiet hero, and e5, white's space advantage. Now let's start talking about typical piece placement in the Caro-Kann, because this is where the opening really starts to make sense. Once you understand where the pieces want to go, the Caro-Kann stops feeling passive and starts feeling logical. Let's start with the pawns actually. We have agreed that d6 and then d5. So what's next? First of all, starting by the light square bishop. The light square bishop is one of the biggest advantages of the Caro-Kann. Unlike the French defense, this bishop is alive. Most commonly, it goes to either f5 or g4. So let's for now place the bishop here. This is a signature Caro-Kann idea. That bishop often comes out early, applies pressure, and sometimes get traded, which is completely fine. And now the dark squared bishop. So typically after putting your light squared bishop out, you close the door after it. The dark squared bishop usually takes a less aggressive route than the light squared bishop. Like most of the time, e7 is so good for the dark squared bishop, because usually sometimes the knight is here, it's being pinned by the white's bishop, and also in some variations d6 also is a good square for it, and some other variations. For instance, let me show you. If the knight is here, you would rather put it here to pin it to the white skins. Sometimes if whites allow, you can win a piece easily. And now the knights. The knights in the Caro-Kann are extremely flexible. Can go to, just let me push the pawn for now, they can go to either c6, d7, e7, f6. These are the ideal squares. This flexibility allows black to adapt to almost any white setup. Nothing is forced. Everything depends on the position. A side note, you may find the knights are more valuable than the bishops in the Caro-Kann defense, since the position in the center is usually closed after white push e5, and the knights gives you this maneuvering power, and usually the light square bishop, it gets traded in the g1 knight. So keeping the knights while playing the Caro-Kann and working on the knight maneuvers. And now Her Majesty. The queen usually stays calm. Common squares for the queen would be c7 and b6. From there, the queen supports, center breaks, and sometimes targets weaknesses on the queen side. And now the rooks. A very important Caro-Kann detail, one rook has to go to c8. Usually, let me show you here, usually the center is closed, and a common break, the common c5 pawn break, requires you to have your rook on the open file or the potentially open file by bringing your rook to c8. And the other rook very often goes to e8, or maybe you double on the c file as well. The c file is usually open, semi-open, or about to be opened. Placing your rook on c8 prepares that idea perfectly. We will see this theme again and again in later variations. And lastly, king safety. In the vast majority of the Caro-Kann positions, black castles kingside quickly and safely. And king usually feels comfortable, and that's a luxury many opponents don't give you. And let me tell you this one last thing in the Caro-Kann overview. The Caro-Kann defense is a chill opening. You are pressuring white by finding ideas. You are pressuring white by forcing the white player to be proactive, to try to break into your position, and that makes them prone for mistakes. So this was the big picture introduction to the Caro-Kann defense. In the next videos of this playlist, we'll go deeper, move by move, until you understand this opening the way strong players do. If you want to start immediately, I've already released a Caro-Kann related video on this channel, and it's about the alien gambit and how you could crush it in only 3 moves playing the Caro-Kann. Make sure to check that out. Stay tuned for next videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Oh my god.